Thank you so much, Ian, for answering. I think there's quite the activity in the Q&A box, so glad to have you here. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so I hope that Surface got you all excited. And what's wonderful about the Microsoft portfolio is that we get the opportunity to have really cool devices like Surface, but we also have premium, best in class productivity and collaboration plus security solutions with Microsoft 365. So shifting gears, Microsoft 365 and the opportunity and the vision for modern work and security moving forward. So let me try to get this to the next slide. Here we go. Now, just before we talk about, the opportunity and the landscape here, I want to kick off with a reintroduction. I know some of you, in fact, maybe a lot of you are very familiar with Office 365, right? Microsoft Office 365. Some of you may be familiar with Microsoft 365, but I want to kick off with a reintroduction because a lot of organizations seem to be confused, and when they hear about 365 from Microsoft, they think about Office 365, right? And so I want to probably reintroduce to you Microsoft 365, and the way to present it is really across these key three things, right? So number one, when you talk about Microsoft 365, there's collaboration, yes, right? So as you present its value, you talk about Microsoft Teams as a platform where your organizations and your customers can collaborate better through a very good teamwork platform. They can chat, they can co-author files, they can use Office within the single pane of glass. They can manage tasks, right, as part of a single team where they can work together, right? So that's collaboration. Of course, you also get email, you get SharePoint for you to build intranet sites on, you get the Power Platform for you to be able to automate processes and build applications, right, to automate some of your processes within your organization. So there's a lot of capabilities just looking at the collaboration stack alone. But Microsoft 365 also covers a large stack of security capabilities, right? So for those who may be familiar with Office 365, there's Office 365 still, yes. There's EMS or Enterprise Mobility and Security. Okay. Enterprise Mobility and Security is also a suite. It's a suite of capabilities that encompass a number of security features. I'll talk about them in a bit. And then finally, there's Windows 10, right? So Windows 10 for enterprise, bring those three together, and that gives you Microsoft 365. Okay, so Microsoft 365 is a suite. It's what we lead with. In any Microsoft presentation will lead with Microsoft 365 and not Office 365 anymore. Because truly, as we talk to our customers, we fully acknowledge that they think about security while they think about enabling and empowering their employees to collaborate better and be more productive with Office, with Teams, with Windows. But they're also equally thinking about security. Their data privacy officer is thinking about security and compliance, right? So your customers, your customers, your organizations, the customers that you have are thinking about them. And so we position Microsoft 365 because it's a holistic view and it's something they actually prefer, right? And I'll tell you in a bit why, not just from a simplicity standpoint. Now, from a security standpoint, let me break down a few key things there, right? So when you make the pitch about Microsoft 365, you talk about collaboration, email, productivity with Office. And when you talk about security, the key to having the security conversation is really about zero trust, right? Enabling zero trust or the zero trust strategy for your organization, maybe for your organization or for your customers, right? And when you think about zero trust is not a Microsoft branding by any means. It's a framework, it's a mindset for organizations to think that, there are generally only two kinds of organizations. Organizations that in some form or manner, in some scale, small or large, have been hacked or do not know that they've been hacked, right? So that's the general perception because it may be like a really small data leakage or a big blown hack altogether, but there's some form of threat, right? And so when we think about zero trust, the concept of zero trust is we always first check, we authenticate, right? We always verify who is logging in. Where are they logging in from? Are they using a secure device? Nobody has a long-standing access. Nobody has this all-powerful IT person who has all the administrator privileges, right? So the concept is you don't trust a single person every time for everything. So the concept of zero trust is when you break it down, it gives your customers a framework of how to think about security. And the thing about zero trust, it's nice because it gives you a phased approach, right? From securing identities. It's the very first step. You want to secure identities because in the end of the day, there's all these hacks around usernames and password leakages, right? See, generally it's where it starts, right? They try to infiltrate emails, get you to to click links. Also, they can access your identities, and when they access your identities, then they get to what they're after, which is really data. So first, you secure identities, and then you secure the devices. Right. So you secure your company's identities. So with multi-factor authentication, you secure your your company's devices, both company owned as well as employee owned. Because if your employees are using their own devices with BYOD, that's fine. But you want to make sure that your data, your company's data, is secure on those devices as well. So you're securing identities, you're securing devices, you're securing the apps themselves, right? You're securing the where am I? Identities, devices, the apps, and of course, you want to make sure that you're fundamentally securing your information, right? Which means if you fail, if they get so lucky and get through identity, get the devices, get access to the devices, get access through applications. Let's say you were not able to implement application layer security protocols, then at the information itself, your customer's Excel file that has all information about their customers, right? Or transactions, that Excel file that contains all those transactions. It's sitting there. If there's any way they get access to the file itself, there must be a way where they can also protect the information layer, right? And yes, that's also possible through information protection. So even if that file gets posted on Facebook, it gets posted on Twitter or wherever public forum, right? On a website. Because the file is encrypted at the file layer, I can get a copy of it, but at no point in time can I open it. Best part, if I try to open it, the owner of the file will also be able to track where the file has been attempted to be opened, right? So there's security, right? So we talk about collaboration, we talk about security, and then finally talk about compliance, right? And when we talk about compliance, the key differentiator of Microsoft here is we are making a commitment to all these regulators to ensure that we're helping organizations comply to fast changing regulations. Right? I was just in a conversation this afternoon with an organization where we were talking about some of the new DICT policies, right? To ensure that some of our CIIs or critical infrastructure organizations in the Philippines are protected because again they're critical to the country, like PPOs, for example, right? So if there's regulation around ensuring that organizations such as BPOs, such as FSIs, compliance to PSP, government agencies complying to the Data Privacy Act, right? We are making a commitment to ensure that we're not just sort of building products, but we're also aligning to regulatory requirements. So we ourselves, as a uh, cloud service provider, as we build these products, we are also complying, right? So we're complying, but at the same time, fundamentally, we're trying to help our customers comply, right? So, and we're making a commitment down to the country level. So a good example of that, the Microsoft Compliance Center. If you subscribe to Microsoft 365 and you're a bank, right? Let's just say you're a bank. You subscribe to Microsoft 365, you avail of the compliance feature. And what it gives you is a compliance dashboard which shows you compliance to different templates, compliance templates, if you will. And two of the templates that you'll find there is the BSP Circular 808, Information Protection, and number two is the Data Privacy Act of 2012 of the Philippines. These are two templates for compliance that organizations that are regulated to these regulators can comply to, and we built it right within our product. What that means is for you as a bank, if you availed of this product and you wanted to comply, it gives you a bit of a framework with a pointing system. It shows you, okay, these are the number of features that you haven't turned on yet that are already part of Microsoft 365. And according to these specific items in Circular 808, you should be turning on. Right. So our commitment to our customers is not just at the global Microsoft level, but even to the level of our commitment to the Philippines as well. Across all of that, it's a bit of a lengthy pitch, I understand, but I'll give you a sense later of why this is important for your customers. Now, across all of that, there's a lot of advantages around mobility, right? We work on any platform. Gone are the days where we demand that you run on Windows. Think about content and enabling you to really build great content with, say, Office and our inking experiences on Surface. Think about workflows, right? Because your customers are not just thinking about we need video conferencing, we need email. They're on this journey of digital transformation, and now they're thinking about things like how do I digitize this paper process, like this approvals, for example. Let's make it even very basic. HR approval. We want to make this better for our employees. We want to digitize this. And you have something like Power Automate and Power Apps that's right within Microsoft 365. And then you have knowledge, of course, the ability of information. If all the information is within a single platform, uh, employees are storing their files in OneDrive, for example, or cloud storage. Intranet sites are being built on SharePoint Online, again, part of Microsoft 365, such as, say, your HR portal or your finance portal or your, I don't know, compliance portal. Because all of it is there, then you have the ability to implement something like enterprise search, right? Privacy, of course, I've mentioned a bit, right? But the ability to ensure that, number one, Microsoft, as a provider, is complying, is ensuring that your privacy is intact, that your data is your data. Number two, how do you ensure that you are also implementing privacy, right? Like for example, implementing data loss prevention. Finally, it's a platform, which means there's so much flexibility around Microsoft 365 for those who have spent their time fully going into depth of what Microsoft 365 has to offer. You'll know that it's so extensible, it's so configurable, and there's a lot of capability around management as well. There's admin centers, and you can even manage which admin centers are available to which admins, right? So I wanted to start with reintroducing because some of you may have not heard of Microsoft 365 in a while, right? Now, going back to where we are today, right? So this is the reality. We're seeing that post COVID-19, there's this challenge around, of course, unemployment. There's challenge about impact of economies, and this is going to push organizations. I'm sure even your own organizations are thinking about how do we cut on costs big time, right? How do we cut on costs, but at the same time, we need to prioritize because we still need to increase our revenue so that we can fundamentally recover, right? And we also know that a lot of industries are impacted. Now, we've heard our customers, we talk to our customers day in and day out, and we acknowledge that they're reaching out in a few key areas, right? Number one, they need to save costs on remote work, right? Remote work is going to be hybrid work at some point in time. Right now, a lot of us are required to work from home. Some of us may be allowed to work already on site, but only in limited capacities. Definitely not 100%. And then, of course, as things change. We go to some version of CQ at some point. There will be either a slow transition back to the office, or we're gonna have to go back to fully remote. Now, as you think about that, the reality is it's going to be hybrid, where there's there's resilience, there's flexibility, right? And so they need to be able to enable this, but in such a way that they're still saving, right? They're thinking about cutting non-essential business expenses, unnecessary T&E, travel, unnecessary paper-based, costs, and of course, being able to secure the workforce, but be able to do so efficiently. And this is how we're helping. This is a conversation where there's this impression, and I'm sure you probably get into this conversation a lot, that Microsoft 365 is just so expensive. I hear you, right? You'll be surprised that why a lot of enterprises are investing in Microsoft 365. And I know this because I was previously from enterprise team, as part of the sales team. The reason why our enterprises are actually looking at moving to Office 365 or Microsoft 365 is because of savings, right? And so this notion that M365 is not SMB friendly, it's not for our organization, it's more for enterprises. You'll be surprised that the reason enterprises are getting Microsoft 365 is not because they're an enterprise and they can afford it, but actually because they need to save. What does that mean, really? What we've learned is that we've sort of developed this framework from all our conversations with all our customers of where we're seeing buckets of savings, right? And number one is around vendor consolidation. I think this is where we've seen the most savings for some of our, for pretty much a lot of customers I've had a chance to deal with, though. And that's the reality that when you think about Microsoft 365, remember that pitch I made just on the Microsoft 365 business alone. I imagine you were thinking about different products for every solution I mentioned. I talked about identity security. You're probably thinking of other vendors. I talked about endpoint protection, right? XDR. You can probably think of something else. Advanced email protection, data loss prevention on email, data loss prevention on endpoint. This could be a very long list of different vendors that can actually be consolidated with Microsoft and Microsoft 365. Even just look at collaboration. Never mind security, just look at the collaboration for a second. Think about video conferencing. Now, totally a necessity. The cost of that platform versus, on top of that, the cost of their email solution, the cost of their intranet collaboration suite solution, the cost of all these other solutions combined, I guarantee would still be much, much higher than Microsoft 365. Now, it would vary by plan to plan. The reason we have plans is so that there's flexibility by persona and use case demand. Of course, there's IT administration and deployment savings because then you're simplifying it through a single platform. There's of course there's it makes it much easier where you don't have to scale up your whole IT and security team on different products. There's of course total cost reduction on total cost of risk, because risk is a cost, especially for regulated industries. T&E, as I mentioned, real estate, allowing for more employees to work flexibly. Automation is a huge saver. I know of organizations who have been on Office 365 for a while now, and they're managing, so they utilize Microsoft Teams, they use collaboration, they use Office day in and day out, and they use they're starting to automate a lot more of their processes, or they're still getting more value out of their existing investment by automating workflows, by digitizing processes, and so that in turn just increases. So as your cost decreases by simplifying, your savings also increases because you're doing a lot more automation on top of an existing platform versus thinking about, okay, for every single project each department needs, you're thinking about the platform, then you're thinking about the cost and the services of deploying that platform, and then the actual execution of that department. But if you had a single platform where each department can say, this is what I need. I'm HR. I need an intranet for HR where I can host all HR related policies. And I can also automate workflows on that HR site where if people wanted to apply for leaves, they can apply for leaves right within that site. And there will be a workflow that runs underneath to route for approvals. All of that is also within Microsoft 365. And if you're on Microsoft 365 as an organization today and you're not using that, sayang. Finally, CapEx to OpEx. A lot of organizations are still on-prem. They're still thinking about Office, thinking about buying perpetual licenses of Office. Sayang. If they're still thinking about, nah, when I buy Office, it's good for 10 years. Think again. Security as is a factor. Products are going to be upgraded much more frequently. They need to, right? Because as I mentioned, times are changing faster. Security risk, cyber risk is growing. They're getting smarter. They're even using AI, and so you know we can't service Office versions for 10 years. So you'll notice if you check the latest updates, our extended support as well as mainstream support has also significantly decreased. So that's a consideration as well, right? So this may not be a Philippine slide, but what I've seen, um, what I'm trying to paint a picture for you here is that for a lot of organizations I've had the pleasure of working with, large and small, is that this could be a slide that is targeted, that is very much designed for them. And this is where your role plays, right? So if you have a conversation with your customer, if you talk about their requirements, talk about the security collaboration requirements, and you truly understand their needs, this slide could be a slide that's directly representative of what they can actually save. Could be in pesos, could be very specific to some of the identified projects that they require, savings that they'll actually make, right? And look again, these prices are all ERP. But if you look really closely, there's a lot of solutions that can be encompassed by Microsoft 365, and it's huge savings for your customers. So the next time, and it's funny, I was in a call just before this webinar, um, with another partner that's just trying to grow their Microsoft business. They are a Microsoft partner, but they haven't significantly invested in it in that side of their business. And there's this impression that Office 365 is just more expensive than everything else, period. But in reality, right? Well, just looking at this, you know that even if this is ERP, you're most likely gonna see a similar picture, right? Multiple vendors, standalone solutions, not talking, not working together, not integrated, and trying to make them work, right? Now, I want to close out with a couple of stories, my personal favorite stories of why organizations are investing in Microsoft 365. And I chose these two because they're close to my heart. They're when we think about, like, say, Supreme Court, when they moved to Microsoft 365, and they didn't take steps. They didn't go, for those who are familiar with Office 365, no, they didn't start Office 365 muna, and then they go Microsoft 365 E3, and then they go Microsoft 365 E5. I mean, there's flexibility. There's a reason we do that, because we want to be flexible to each and every organization. But what Supreme Court did was they went straight up to Microsoft 365 E5 for a couple of reasons. We worked with them on their e-courts initiative. When COVID happened, courts still had to run, right? Because if courts were not running, court hearings were not running, then you have individuals that were potentially held. But because hearings cannot happen, they would have to be held until a hearing happens, right? For a judge to hear their case. In the first 9 days alone, we saw about 4,600 individuals that were released because they were unable to do virtual court hearings. Now, you could imagine, being Filipinos, virtual court hearings would have been an alien concept in the past, right? No way. Court hearings are court hearings. But the reality is, every organization is thinking about ways to be more efficient. If there's hesitation in the past, just look at organizations like even government agencies. They're opening up, right? So if you have customers that are hesitating, it's most likely because of other cases other than the fact that there's nothing that there's a risk with moving to cloud, right? In reality, there's a lot of value, right? So there's value in looking at it holistically. Why didn't they use another platform, video conferencing platform for hearings? It's primarily because of security, right? So they needed to make sure that these hearings are stored securely, encrypted, that the transcriptions can be used. If you're not aware, Microsoft Teams allows for recording with transcriptions, right? So it will automatically transcribe. Of course, there's a limitation around languages for now. But point being, right, there's a lot of value beyond just a video conferencing platform. And with security, they were able to use the end-to-end stack, right? And it turned out to be savings more than anything for them. Another is, of course, Department of Education, where, as you can see, they have a massive Microsoft 365 deployment. Uh, they're at the millions, the last I checked, because that's actually all faculty and students across the country, all public schools, right? Uh, and so, ever since this is just graduation in a box, this isn't even talk about the extent of what DepEd has done with Microsoft Teams. And we're working with them, right? It's a large, large organization across the Philippines. You have different public schools, and so we're working with them very, very closely to ensure that all public schools get the benefit, right? But they made a significant investment. And so what am I saying here? Uh, if if your conversation is still around cost, then you should be having the reverse, right? You should be saying, this is actually the reason why you're going to save more. You're paying for Office, you're paying for Windows, you're paying for this endpoint protection, you're paying for this CASB, you're paying for all these other siloed solutions. Let me tell you why you're going to save with M365 instead. And the beauty of that for you as a partner is the breadth of services you can offer. You can sell M365 to a single customer, and I don't know, every month you'll have an opportunity for services. Why? Because there's so much in that platform. Some business unit is gonna say we need to automate this finance process. Um, we worked with a bank in the Philippines where it was Treasury themselves that automated with Power Automate and Power Apps is the one they built, and it wasn't even built by IT. It was so impressive. And so the opportunity around services is massive. Okay, so with that, I would like to thank you all and open it up for questions.